Good evening, everybody, and welcome. My name is Patrick Ferris with REEF Polling by iClicker, and I want to thank you for joining us this evening. Thank you for giving up a little bit of your summer to join us and look at different technologies that are available and think about new ways that you could really change your classroom and engage students. And so our goal tonight is to really look at three different ways that we can create a dynamic classroom and really engage our students. And so that's kind of what we want to look at tonight. My name is Patrick Ferris, and I am a former teacher, a former educator. I spent about 6 years in a middle school math classroom, and so I am excited to be able to share some ideas with you and some strategies. I'm very excited to be here tonight, and so I want to thank you for joining us. I want to thank you for giving up a little bit of your time tonight. And with that being said, we're going to go ahead and dive right in. So before we start, I want to talk a little bit about today's students. You've seen this for yourself and you've experienced this. Today's students, and I heard a great podcast by Dr. Tim Elmore recently, and if you haven't checked out his website, Growing Leaders, I encourage you to do that. It's a great resource and really talks about millennials and the typical or maybe the college student that we see today. And he talks about those students as being EPIC, and that's the acronym we're going to look at, EPIC. The E being experiential. And so our students today aren't really looking for a sage on the stage. They're looking for a guide on the side. Second, those students are participatory. They want ownership. Young people today, they support what they help create. Third, they're image rich. He calls today's college student and young leader a screenager. They've been exposed to digital learning. They've had a screen in front of them for a long time, and this is the language of the 21st century. They see images on Instagram, on Facebook, on Snapchat, all these different forms of media that they're connected to. And that brings us to the last letter, C, which is connected. So our students today are used to being connected socially and then technologically as well. We want them to be able to connect with each other. We want them to own the idea. And if we can pull off these four things in our classroom, then I really think that we increase the chances of getting through to students. We help them understand better. We help them learn, and that's really our goal. And so with that being said, we're going to talk a little bit tonight about reasons why we might look at a response system. You may have seen clickers in the past. You may have been exposed to them. When I was teaching, we would, and this was 10 years ago, but clickers were new, and it was a great piece of technology, a great way to engage students. So we could check out the clickers, we could use them, we could do multiple choice, and it was great. But technology has changed over the last 10 years, and we have the ability to do more with a student response system than just multiple choice, A, B, C, D, and a physical clicker. It'd be great if we could leverage technology that students already have, and so they can use their laptops, they can use their iPad or their tablet or their phone to really be engaged in the classroom. If we could provide instant feedback to students, we could assess where they are and we can intervene. And then thirdly, if we can engage students, they're more likely to come to class and to be engaged and to participate while we're there. So with those three things in mind, I want to talk about REEF Polling and talk about what this is as a response system. I'm going to go ahead and take a look at my software that we see right here. The REEF Polling software allows students and instructors to communicate in a classroom in a way that we haven't seen before. We're able to engage students and ask them different types of questions. We're able to interact and engage them. So that's what we want to look at today. And so for the next 15 or 20 minutes, we're going to look at REEF Polling, what that is from a student experience, and then really get some ideas of ways that you might use this in your classroom, whether it's a class of 20 or 200. So I'm going to go ahead and start our polling session tonight. And when we do that, what you're going to see is a little toolbar that floats over whatever we're doing. I'm going to ask some different types of questions, and I'm not going to just be in PowerPoint. I'm not limited to PowerPoint. I can be in Word. I can be on a website. I can be in many different places. And so I've gone ahead and started a polling session. The next thing that I want to do is, as a student, I want to join the class. So all I would do is click Join, and I have a few different devices here tonight that I'm going to join with so that we can see different responses and what that might look like. A couple of things that we're going to be able to see as students join the class is that we have the number of participants right here. And if we want to see who is attending and who is participating, we can simply click that box and see the people that have joined us tonight. I'm going to come back to my instructor software that we talked about earlier. This is the REEF Polling toolbar. The first question that I'm going to ask us tonight, we're going to make a very simple question so that you can see what this might look like. The first question you see in my PowerPoint slide, and I'm going to go ahead and send that to us, the students, or to the class. And the way that we do that is we just click the box that says polling, or the word that says polling. And when we do that, we get a new box that pops up. These give us different question types. So we have multiple choice, short answer, numeric, and then a target question. And we'll look at each of those 4 question types tonight. The first thing that I'm going to do is when I'm ready to ask a question, I simply click the blue circle with the white arrow inside of it. When I do that, what a student would see, a student's going to get a screenshot of the instructor's computer, and they're going to be able to answer that question. And the question says, how many animals of each sex did Moses take on the ark? And so we have lots of different answers that we can choose from. I'm going to go ahead and select an answer here as E. One of the things that you'll notice is as students respond, we're able to see this number right here on the right. Right now, 1 student has responded. 2 students have responded. And 3 students have responded. So what I'll do is I'll stop the poll. And then as the instructor, I have the ability to look at the results if I'd like. So I can see that one of my students selected A, 1 selected D, and 1 selected E. It's kind of split. This gives me a chance to go back maybe and reteach and help students understand and see if we can come up with a better answer. So what I'm going to do right now is I'm going to take my pen and I'm going to cross out, or I'm going to underline keyword on this slide. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to re-ask this question to students. And so now what students are going to see is how many animals of each sex did Moses take on the ark. So hopefully now that students reread the question, they'll see, maybe I think the answer is D. D for all of our answers. 3 students have responded, so I'm going to stop the poll in 3, 2, 1. I stop our poll. If I'm the instructor, I'm still in my PowerPoint. I click results. I can see that 3 students have answered it correctly. If I want to compare those 2 questions side by side, I can see that question 1 student answered correctly, and question 2, all 3 students answered correctly. If I want to grade that question, all I do is click on it, it turns green, and that answer is saved. On the student side, what I would see is that the answer that I selected was D, and the correct answer was D. I can also click and see the results of the entire class. So that was one of our types of questions that we have access to. I'm going to go ahead and turn off my pen now. But there's other types of questions. Multiple choice questions and clickers have been around a long time. And if that's all we use the technology for, that's good. But we're really not leveraging the technology to get the full benefit. So what I want to do right now is come into a Word document that I've created. And you'll see that my REEF Polling toolbar still floats over exactly what I'm doing. Now, I met with a sociology instructor earlier this week, and she had a great example of a way to use technology. She had a guest speaker come into her classroom, and she wanted students to be able to ask questions of that guest speaker, but do it anonymously and really use technology to do that. And so what I've gone ahead and done tonight for our Sam Houston State group, we have a picture here that you may be very familiar with if you've ever traveled through Huntsville. And today's guest speaker is Sam Houston. What questions would you like to ask? And what I'm going to do is I'm going to allow students to ask a short answer question. And what you'll see is that students will get a screenshot, and they'll be able to type in their short answer question right here. So I'll go ahead and ask a question, and I'll go ahead and submit this. If I'm the instructor, one of the great things that I can do is I can see those questions as they come in. So if we want to have an engaging discussion with a guest speaker or as part of a presentation, as students type in those responses, those are going to be able to pop up here on the screen, and we'll see them. So a student would type in their question for the presenter. And students have 140 characters that they could use, so Twitter link. And so as students type in the questions, I don't have to stop the poll. All I need to do is just look at my screen, and I'm able to see those responses as they come in. I'll go ahead and stop the poll, and this would give me a chance now to ask the presenter or ask our guest speaker questions that students may be hesitant to ask. Or if I'm in a large class, this would give me a way to see, are there some common questions that we could ask our guest speaker, some common themes. So I thought it was a really unique and creative way to use the technology, and it really helps us use that short answer question type. Another question type that we have access to is called the target question. This has been very popular. Right now it's in beta test, but the full version of this question will be live in the fall. So the question that I would ask those students tonight is, where is Huntsville located? And so what students would do, and if I'm a student, this is what I would see on my screen. If students had their iPhone or their Android device, they could zoom in or zoom out. I'm going to go ahead and submit a few responses. And then as the instructor, I'll come back and see what this might look like from my perspective. I see that all three of my students have responded, so I'm going to go ahead and stop the poll. I'm going to look at the results, and if I wanted to grade them, I see that two of my students have gotten close to Huntsville. One of my students has landed in about Abilene tonight. And so I have the opportunity to go back and reteach. I'm going to save those answers, and students could go back and see the results. This is very powerful and helpful for students because they have access to these questions. So students can go back and look at question 3, question 1, question 2, question 3, question 4. So all of the questions that have been asked during our session, students can access, and they can still see those questions. Even after we end the session, students will have access to that. So there's one last question type that I haven't yet shown, and that's what I'll show now. And the last question gives us a chance to look at a numeric question. Numeric is very similar to short answer, but this gives us some access to math, to numbers, to symbols, so that students can answer a question. So the question says divide 30 by 1/2 and add 10. What is the answer? I'll go ahead and put in a few responses. And so on the student side, what a student would see is the screenshot, and then they would be able to see their answer. If I'm the instructor, when I stop the poll and look at the results, I've got a wide range of answers, everything from 25 to 70. So in a math classroom, what this would give me the ability to do is to go back in, take my pen, and now when I write this question a little bit differently, sometimes students in a college algebra class or in a math classroom might see 30 divided by 1/2 plus 10. Sometimes just seeing a question written a little bit differently can be beneficial. So now I'm going to ask that same question, and hopefully this time, as students look at the way that I've written the question, they'll realize that 30 divided by 1/2 is the same thing as 30 times 2, which gives us 60, plus 10 would give us 70. And so students can see the work as we progress. They're actually understanding the concept, which is our goal. I'll stop the poll. I'll look at the results and see that all three of my students got it correct with a 70. That is the correct answer. So we've had a chance tonight to look at really the 4 different question types. And so in our last 5 to 10 minutes, what I want to do now is look at what might happen after the class is over. So at the conclusion of class, all I would do as the instructor is close out of my software. At the end of the session, what students would see is that the session has ended, and then they can go back in and review the questions. So they've created their own study guide. As the instructor, though, what I would be able to do, back to my instructor software, is to go back and look at my session history. So this was session 1 that we've just concluded. And in session 1, I can go through and look at all of the questions that I've asked. So question 1, how many animals of each sex did Moses take on the ark? I also asked that same question for question 2. I could also go back in and grade my responses at this time if I didn't want to grade them during class. If I wanted to give credit for all 3 of these questions for being good questions, I could mark them correct if I wanted to do that. We can go through and look at all of those different questions in one place. Now, a couple of other things that we can do. If we click this little pop-out arrow right here, one of the things that we can do is we can export this. We can export this to a number of different formats. We can export this to a format that's consistent with our LMS. And LMS stands for Learning Management System. So whether that's Canvas or Blackboard or Sakai, whatever you're using, you'll be able to export that in a way that you can simply upload that into your LMS and students would receive credit. You don't have to do that, but you can. I'm just going to export this to an Excel spreadsheet so that we can take a look at the results. When I open that Excel spreadsheet, I can see all of the students in my class at one time. I can go back in and look at question 1, question 2, question 3, and in each question I can see the screenshot, I can see the answers, the responses from every student. So this gives me a clear view of what happened in my classroom. A couple other things that I'll bring your attention to very quickly. If we click on roster, this is another place that we could see our learning management system if things have been synced. We can see the total points that students have received throughout the class or throughout the session. If we wanted to sync our scores to our LMS, we could do that with one click. So once we set up everything, if we wanted to do that, we would just click on Sync Scores to LMS, and everything would be sent to Blackboard or Canvas, whatever it is that we're using at Sam Houston State. So that's a great benefit. A couple other things. Inside the course and the session that we have, you as the instructor have some nice controls that you can adjust. When we set up our course for the first time, all we need to do is put in our institution and the course name. The other information is optional. One of the nice things about REEF Polling is that we know a great majority of our students have access to smartphones or laptops, but some may not. And those students that don't have access could use a physical clicker. So they could bring in their clicker and they could still participate in class. And this is where we can set some of those things up. Inside of REEF Polling, you as the instructor have some controls. And those controls involve if you want to share your screen or not. So there may be a time that you don't want students to have access to the screenshot. This is where we can turn that off. Or maybe we want to send a screenshot after the polling ends, and this is where we can set those controls. If we don't want students to see the results, we can also turn those off. If we click the scoring tab, this is where students can receive credit for participation. So this participation is per session. So if students answer at least 75% of the questions, they'll receive 1 participation point. The second part is performance, and the performance is per question. So with each question asked, right now I have my setting as 1 point for the correct response and 0 for responding. If I want to change that, a number of my colleagues will change this to 0.5 points for responding correctly and 0.5 just for responding. So students have the opportunity to get 1 point if they answer correctly. I'm going to go ahead and move mine back to 0 and 1 for this session. If we have multiple courses, all of those courses will be located right here. If we wanted to add a new course, we would just click New Course. We can type in Sam Houston State University. And as we type that in, it will populate, and then we can put in our course right here. We've got a couple of minutes left, and in those last few minutes, what I want to talk briefly about is how do I get started? So this is great. How do I try this out? How do I see if this would work with my classes, with my students? So one is you'll have my contact information, and I'll follow up with each one of you so that you will have access to the recorded version of this webinar. Feel free to contact me. I'm right up the road, right outside of Austin, Texas, in Georgetown. So I am all across the state, and I'm happy to stop by if there's a way that I can help. We can also set something up online so that you can get started. You can try this out. We can get you a 14-day trial for your students. You can give it a shot and see what works. For us to get started, it's very easy, and that's one of the designs of REEF Polling. It takes less than 2 minutes, no more than 5, between 2 and 5 minutes to get started as an instructor. All we would do is go to the REEF-education website, www.reef-education.com. When we get to the site, we click Get Started. And then as an instructor, I would download the software. So whether we're on a Windows machine or a Mac machine, this is where we have access to those things. We would download it, and we're ready to go. So as we wrap up tonight, I'm going to jump through some of the other questions that I didn't have a chance to ask. And I'll just give you a quick overview of REEF Quizzing. We're very excited to announce that REEF Quizzing, which is in beta test right now as well, will be available in the fall. And REEF Quizzing allows students to take a self-paced quiz. So if you had a 5-question quiz that you wanted to give at the beginning or the end of class, students could take this on their own. There's some great ways that I've seen instructors use this tool, and I'm excited about additional instructors being able to use this with their classes. Coming soon is REEF attendance, so a way that you'll be able to take attendance with your students, and as soon as they come into the classroom, you will know if they are there. So another great feature. REEF analytics, we didn't talk a lot about tonight, but you'll be able to see how many questions you've asked, what your colleagues are doing, and sometimes administrators are really interested in who is using REEF polling and how can we make this more efficient and more effective on a large scale at the university level. So with that being said, I want to be respectful of your time. I want to thank you for joining us tonight. If there's anything that I can do to help, please don't hesitate to ask. My email address is patrick.ferris@mcmillan.com. My phone number is 512-688-0218. I want to thank you for sharing your time with me tonight. I hope to be able to connect with you soon. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your summer, and I'm excited to be able to help you as you try new technology, as you do new things to really make a difference with your students starting in the fall. So keep me posted if I can help in any way. Have a great night. Have a great rest of your summer. Bye-bye, everybody.